Hello. There you go. We are live. Feels like forever, and it has been forever.
It's been a while. We've had a crazy past few weeks. Though our luck was that we did make it to Florida in between two hurricanes.
Yes, that is very true.
So that is unusually lucky for both of us.
Yes. No, but I think that the last time we did one, just the two of us, was right before. No, I think you did one, and then that's when I was in Brazil. And I think we
Hmm.
did one after that, and then we did the one with our guest star with our guest last time as well. No,
Right.
everybody's a guest star. Um, so it's been a minute. Um, but not that our conversations have stopped. It's just that
True.
you moved, you moved.
Yeah, notice I'm in like my living room, half of my studio right
Yeah,
now.
there you
So
go. Very different background. So we're getting there. So yeah, I talked to Anna a couple weeks, like last week, and I said, I really want to talk about, we've been talking about soft skills since we met,
mhm.
but I had one interaction that really triggered me. I mean, I have a few of these interactions every day, but one in specific really triggered me on how the person that approached me came to me and was simply like, "Is this hotel historical?" And I just look at that person. No hello, no good afternoon, no, hey, do you even work here? Right? It was just like, "Is this hotel historical?" I was like, and I look around and I'm like, is she talking to me? Because it's like it felt such like an intrusive, right, thing. And I said, yes, it is. And I stopped talking. That was the question she asked, right? And me being polite, I answered that question. And then the mother of this person shows up. Imagine this is a grown woman, right? So the mother shows up and I was like, oh, when was it built? And then I was like, well, apparently there's no more information. And I was like, no, there is. And I said when it was built. And then the father shows up and the father says, oh, was there anything significant that happened here or anything like that? And I was like, absolutely, let me show you. And I walked around and showed them. But this has just been the top, like the tip, like actually the drop that overflowed the cup, because every day the interactions that I have are like people look at me and say, bathrooms, or where's the pool, where so there is this lack of knowing how to even approach a stranger or how to ask for
Mhm.
something, asking for a favor. And I was like, oh my God, they see me as not just me. I'm talking, right? Like this is what I experienced, but I see this happen all the time with everybody. That people are starting to see other people as touchscreens of like totons of information, right? So you don't go into Google and say, hey, how are you?
Well,
Or
when you texted me about this, the first thing I said was it sounded like she was typing in a Google search.
yeah, like,
Yeah.
why is this? And I'm like,
And she was mad she didn't get all the results she get from Google.
correct,
Asked
because
her
again,
for it, but she was like, apparently there's no more information. It was like, I'm sorry, I didn't know I was supposed to give you 13 pages.
and that was the thing. And then I think at that moment I was like, okay, so it is a problem. Like, right, when I started my career, especially in the United States, there was no smartphones, right? They were like, I still had like the Sony Ericsson of life, right? Like it wasn't, there was no iPhone, didn't exist. And I
Hmm.
have seen how people have changed throughout the years. They're like almost 20 years now, right? Like 18, 19 years. How those interactions have changed a lot, right? Of like nowadays, that's what it is. They're very short. They're very like no. Sometimes I ask, "Oh, do you guys know where you're going?" Yep, and they just look at their phone, and that's all they say. Yep, and they just take off, and you're like, yeah, but your phone might die. You might lose your phone. Like, do you know where you're going? You're in a strange city. Like, do you need help?
Hmm.
Um, but I feel like people don't know. Even when you approach to talk to them, they're just very like, why are you talking to me? And
Something you've noticed more in recent years, because I know you've mentioned, I think in the previous podcast on safety, that there's a new traveler.
Yes, this new
So
travel. No,
it's
I think this
center.
is. I think it's been gradually throughout the years.
I
You
was gonna
know,
just
um,
getting worse.
yeah, clearly, and every time there's something new coming up, right? So first it was just the phones and your ability to ask a question. You don't need to retain information anymore. You just need to have access to information.
Mm-hmm.
So the whole thing, there's a lot of information in the world, but there's not a lot of knowledge because of that, because you don't need to retain anything. Your phone is right there. So that
Right.
has changed with like silly questions of people like calling and asking some random questions, and you're like, you should have used Google for. But the fact that
That's so
you
true.
but the fact that you pick up the phone and you call to ask, like, and listen, and I know that I have been in the hotel industry for my whole career. So for anybody listening, especially you know, LinkedIn and TikTok and all that, if the check-in is at 3 o'clock, that does not mean that you need to be at the front desk at 3 o'clock. That's not what that means. It means that at 3 o'clock is usually, and I'm not going to say the time, usually or whatever, 4 is the time when your room is more likely to be already ready. That's all it is, right? Because a lot of people will call and be like, "Hey, I see that the check-in's at 3, but can I get there at 4?" I'm like, "Yes, you can get here at 4."
Oh, really?
Well,
People
let
don't.
me tell you the amount of people that ask these questions. It's not one or two. It became a trend at one point, like everybody calling for that. Or so it's like, or then they say, well, they said check-in was at 3. Yes, but that doesn't mean that your room is necessarily going to be ready, because if something happens in the hotel and we can't turn the rooms quickly enough, so again, but that understanding of how the world works. Your flight is scheduled to leave at a certain time too. And it might be a couple minutes delayed. And you know what I'm like, that's how life
Increasingly
works.
lately.
Yeah, we don't, but I think that that expectation of the merging of the two worlds, of the virtual with the physical world, and expecting people to act like their iPhones, right? Or people acting like their social medias, and people, it just it's just really strong right now. And I think you mentioned something about a situation where people will spend their time like playing video games all day.
Yeah. So when you reached out to me about this, my first thought was, so a couple years ago, or a little over a year ago, when I was first really starting my business, I decided to have a roommate for the first time in many years, because I was like, I just need to save that money and put it towards like building the business. And I knew it would always be tough. I have had two roommates ever out of over 20 throughout, college, grad school, that actually cleaned up after themselves. And I'm not like white glove inspection, but like, just, you didn't act like that in my mama's house. I'm sorry. So, but it was, so I knew there would be things like that. But what I was startled by, because this person was younger, probably older Gen Z, which is still pretty young, you know,
Yeah.
um, was their total lack of social skills. Where at first I thought maybe they're neurodivergent. I'm neurodivergent. I know a lot of people who are neurodivergent, but it was different. It wasn't it wasn't the same patterns, and it just wasn't the same things. They did not know how to, not just how to pick up or read a room, which that can be neurodivergence. They didn't know how to handle any kind of conflict. Even things like, any time that I came into the common room, because it was 2 bedroom and we had like the kitchen, they would come out and talk to me like incessantly. And even if I had like headphones on or was on a phone call, and I'd be like, I'm on, and like they would just keep talking. Like, it's like, I'm on a call. Like they just keep, and it was, I finally got to the point where I was like, just because I'm in a common space doesn't mean I'm like available, right? Like I was in the kitchen for 2 minutes. I just need to run in and run out. And they got so offended that then they stopped talking to me at all. And
Yeah.
it was like, there's a medium, right? Um, And all this person did, I lived with them for a year, was go to work and play video games. And it just eventually dawned on me. I was like, I don't, maybe, they could be in some way, but I was like, I don't think they're just neurodivergent. I think they literally do not know how to interact in the real world. Because they would also say things like they'd come home and I would be in the kitchen and I would be like not listening to something or just chill. And I'd be like, hey, how's it going? And they'd chat a little bit. And then they'd be like, okay, well, I'm going to go hang out with my friends. And they would just go in their room and play video games. I'm sure live with other people because I'd hear them talking, yelling at people. But it was like, that's not hanging out with your friends.
But that's what, especially during the pandemic, that's what happened.
It was the only interaction we had. So
the only
again,
one.
older Gen Z. So the pandemic was happening probably when this person was in college, of like formative years when you would be learning independence and being, on your own for the first time. And I'm sure, there's other things that go on, of course, but it really startled me. And then especially with, I've had a lot of TikTok growth since May.
Mm-hmm.
I noticed with the questions I get asked and things you said of like, okay, but that's something you should Google, or the transactionalness of the relationship. I've been asked questions about networking that get into that of, so how does networking's never worked for me? What do you mean? Do people just really go in there and ask somebody for a job? And I'm like, no, that is not what that means.
See, is that building the connection,
build a relationship, not knowing where it will go.
Yeah.
And it may not even be that person, but maybe they refer you to someone else. And at worst case, you met a new person.
Yeah.
You learned something new. And the other being, people are like, what do you ask about when you network? And I'm like, well, you need, or when you reach out to somebody on LinkedIn, like ask them something that you couldn't just Google. Like have a real conversation. There's not like the right question to ask. And I think I gave the example of my partner's in a group chat because he went back to school where somebody asked something like, how do you make pancakes? And he sent me a screenshot and he was like, did they really just ask me how to make pancakes? And I was like, and that's when it dawned on me. I was like, it's not that this person doesn't know how to Google. They're seeking a connection, but they don't know how. Yes. And a simple rephrase of what's your favorite way to make pancakes would make that totally different.
Yep.
But how it came across was, I don't know, while you're typing it in WhatsApp, why don't you put it in Google and figure it out?
And, I've done that to my family where I messaged them. I was like, hey, how do you make this? Not because I can't Google it, but because I want to know how we have always made it before Google. Like, what is the family recipe? Yeah. I've done that.
So I think we have to have some mercy there, but I think it's definitely influencing people who are like our age and older who didn't grow up with that kind of smartphone technology all the time are like, why are you asking me this? Right. But then there's also the flip of, okay, but I am not Google. I am a human. So talk to me like I am a human.
Yep. Yeah.
Because honestly, it'd be great networking if you talk to someone about their pancake recipe and then follow up on LinkedIn and you're like, hey, I'm just here for pancake recipes. That's somebody I'm absolutely going to connect with because I think they're cool,
right?
And I know they listened.
That is the thing. You were saying it, and I thought about another example. People will call the hotel to ask how far are we from the airport.
Oh, Jesus.
Like,
not if you have an airport shuttle. How far you are from the airport.
How far are you from the airport? Like, that is something that you Google. Like, that is something that nowadays, you do not need another human being to ask that question for you, right? Like, and I get that you call but now, and I usually say, let me Google that for you. Or like, where is that? I literally say, let me Google it for you.
That's a very politically correct way to respond.
Yeah, because it's like, I'm trying to teach you also that you can do that, right?
Mm-hmm. Because again, are understaffed and have all the people waiting at the hotel desk.
Yeah. And it's not like I don't want to help you. It's just that if you call me because you want to make sure your room is a certain way, because you celebrate it, I'm more than happy to help, because these are things that only another human being can do, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure that there is a possibility that you can select these options too, and then, the program will give you the perfect room. But that's where you build the connections, right? Like that's where you do that. Calling me to ask how far we are from the airport, and that's not trying to build a connection. That's laziness. That you're not trying to. It's seeing us as, again, your servant, not providing a
What's
service.
wild is that's actually more work to call you.
100%.
But
And like
I hate calling hotels.
calling
You gotta
people,
sit on the, choose the operator, whatever.
but I think it's because also we interact with people in a genuine manner, right? Like we have these connections on a daily basis with people. Even if it's not every day, it's often enough that we don't need to forge these connections, that we need to like pretend that we're calling for something just so we can talk to another human being.
Mm-hmm.
You know what
Mm-hmm.
I'm saying? Because I feel like a lot of times is that too. Um, some people, we learned this very early in hotels, is that a lot of people, they're not complaining because they want something. They're complaining because they want to be heard. They want you to understand their frustration.
And more than ever, people are lonely right
They're
now.
very lonely, very lonely. And I remember back in 2006 when I had just started, and mind you, this is 2006, right? Like no iPhones, social
Right.
media, none of that. And I remember I know I mentioned one interaction I had before that I was in Brazil, but there was this one guest, and this was in Florida. And every time he'll come in, I'll crack a joke with him. And I would say, because I think his first name was Italian, his last name was French. So I caught on that, right? And then I kept joking with him throughout his stay. And after he left, he sent me flowers and he said, I don't think I have ever been this welcome in my life. And I traveled.
Oh,
And
wow.
and that
You
all
did
I
the
did,
service.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
well, I did was, and I have, and I said this before here, like I have a lot of people that work for me that says like, how are you so good with people? I said, because honestly, I genuinely want to talk to them. I'm interested in them. I want to know how they, when I ask people, how was your day? I'm not asking how many sales you made. I'm not asking how many issues you had at work. How was your day? Did you have a good day? Was the day, besides anything that you want to tell me that it was work related, was it good or was it bad? Or is there anything I can do? Like that kind of genuine connection of, I want to know you. I want to build this, right? We have such little time talking to each other, especially in hotels. I want to make sure that you feel that you matter. But not because it's my job, but because I genuinely want to make you feel like you matter. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, and I think that not nobody, absolutely exaggerating here, but now, but I think that there is a lot of that now. And, we were talking before we went live of, there's so much information, so many books, I cannot get on any social media, especially LinkedIn, that is like, you got to do this to be the best GM. You got to do this to best that. And I'm like, oh my God, can we just stop telling people what they need to? Because these are just like bullet points, right? So it's like um, you know what I'm talking about? How to be a better leader, how not to destroy you. Like, there's so much of that. There's just so much. And it's
Mm-hmm.
like, I get it that people, because I've done those too, and I get it. I get the purpose of it, but there's also the other side of it, of people that are receiving that information.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's so many it's just like the diet industry, or like the food industry, right? Like one month, kale. I was thinking about this today. We don't juice anymore. Juice was a hype,
Yep.
like a few years ago. That's all people talk about was juice, and then all of these juice places have closed down because it's no longer,
The thing.
the thing. And it's like, and it's kind of the same thing. Okay, so servant leadership is the topic of the month, so that's all you see on LinkedIn, and then you see something else. But it's like, the people that are taking that information, are they taking that and being a robot and simply reproducing those things, or are they taking the time to learn what those things actually mean, and not just take those, uh, 3 bullet points and be like, okay, this is my truth now, and I am just going to incorporate them. Like, but do you even know how to do that?
Well, it. You have a couple things that I want to highlight of, like you said with the diet culture analogy. We go on these fads that are not sustainable. Like juicing didn't make it because you're not supposed to just live off juice.
Juice, yeah.
Even if you have like organic, fresh vegetables and fruits,
Oh yeah.
you still need protein. Like you still need other ways. Like you still need solid
You
food.
need solid food. Yeah, you need
Yeah.
solid food.
But all of these fads are what they're dancing around is living a healthy lifestyle, and that is not the same for everyone, right? And that like the way, like if we've said before, if we all ate the same and worked out the same, we'd still have different bodies, right?
Correct.
But they're dancing around what the real answer is, and that's how I feel about a lot of employee,
Otherwise, I don't make money.
right? And how I feel about a lot of employee initiatives, like DEI or employee experience, etc., is you're dancing around the same unwritten rules. You're dancing around the same, you're rebranding how you're doing nothing.
Yep.
We're causing another problem. And one of those things, speaking of, sorry, I wrote notes here to try not to lose my point of view or my train of thought. One of those things is indirect communication. That's one of the unwritten rules, learning how to speak more indirectly, where people from working class backgrounds and communities of color are more direct. A lot of African, Latin American cultures, etc. That's a hard shift to this indirectness. And so I have worked with, when I work with people and I talking to people about are they from more direct or indirect cultures and what's the appropriate learning the language of the workplace and being more forgiving about that, is I frequently hear people say, well, I just use ChatGPT for that. I don't have to learn this skill. I just use ChatGPT for that. And that reminds me of what you just said, of people use these phrases, right? They insert them along the way. And you can't, like, not only can you not just throw the wrong phrase around and it's going to heal things, you also can't just be in a live conversation with someone in person or virtual and be like, hold on, she said this, what do I say? Like, that doesn't work. And ChatGPT is just pulling from other things of what people have said. That doesn't mean it's going to be correct.
Yeah.
Or non-repetitive. It's so repetitive. I mean, it has its uses. I 100% use it, especially for all the social media work I do.
Oh yeah.
I still edit it. I still edit it. And you can't do it live. You feel how awkward that pause was when I had to check my notes because I am scatterbrained?
Yeah, no, but it's because it's
that every time I was like, please hold. Raquel just says, what do I say back? Okay.
and you just read it, right? It's not, again, it's not genuine. It's not a connection. Like, the connection of two human beings.
Yeah.
That no longer exists, right? Now it's always you trying to get something. I said this before to you too, and it's like people now feel like every interaction means that you're trying to get something from them, right? It's no longer, but it's true, right? Like if I say hello to somebody, like, nope, thank you. And because there's so many people pitching out on the street, every phone call that you get, it's a marketing call. Like everybody that comes talk to you, they want something from you.
Yeah.
And it's like when you have somebody that genuinely, I was like, hey, how's it going? How's your stay going? They were like,
what are you trying to sell?
Oh,
yeah,
exactly. So I think that there is this loss of understanding that we're not products and we're not buyers, right? Like that's not all it is. Like I don't see you as a number or as a product or a buyer, a potential buyer, or just like money. I don't see you as money, right? I don't see you as somebody that I can get something from. And it's more of like, I just genuinely want to chat with you for a minute. And it's funny because like it's a very cultural thing too. because that's one of the things in Brazil that I complain about the most is that people just want to talk to you because they want to freaking talk to you without getting to the point. They just want to have a conversation. And as I'm saying this, that's people will talk to no, people will strike a conversation with you anywhere, but to the point that it's like, dude, I am in the bad mood. I do not want to talk to you, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, but even now in Brazil, things are different. This is when I grew up. Right? I grew up in the 80s, so it was a different, and I used to talk to everybody. I've always talked to everybody. I care less who you are and what do you do for a living. I'm going to talk to you. And I remember like people just would not stop talking, like in Brazil too. Like they'd just strike up a conversation with you anywhere. Um, to the point that when I go back, I find it strange.
Oh, we actually have a comment. Oh, go
But
ahead.
not because, and that's the thing, because I know they don't want anything from me, because I know they just want to talk. I don't want to just talk.
Well, in my hometown, we always say don't go to Walmart if you don't want to talk, because my town's so small. There's one Walmart. We got it when I was 12. It's a big deal. If you go to Walmart, you're going to run into everybody you went to high school with, or their mama, and like it's rude if you don't talk to them.
Yeah.
So we have a live comment.
Okay.
That's interesting. I work in a prison, and just about every interaction I have with an inmate, I have to keep in the back of my mind, is he trying to get something from me? I think, well, there are different power dynamics in prison.
Yes. Yes.
Because I think people are definitely more desperate due to,
And what they are more known. I think they more known. I think they are known for being more deceiving. You know what I'm saying? Like people that are in prison
they
are
don't
usually,
have their rights, you
yeah,
know?
but like I feel like they don't necessarily have their background doesn't allow you to be trusting of them. You know what I'm saying? Because you already come with a perception that they are in jail for a reason. You may know or not know, but because they did something that they know they're not supposed to do. So their characters already at hanging by a thread. You know what I'm saying? Like, so you
Well,
already know
I
they're not.
hear you. I would just also raise that the American criminal justice system is really fucked up.
Well, it's not just here. That's everywhere, though. Like
True, but
it's just everywhere.
it's a whole thing. We have for-profit prisons, and we have more prisoners than I think anywhere else in the world.
Yeah, but at least, yeah, no, well, let's not go into that one because, yeah, that.
So I think there are ways you can humanize someone.
Yes,
Not
100%.
everyone works in a prison, um, but there are certainly going to be situations where if your role is going to be to have power over someone, that is not going to be the same thing.
100%, yes. And I think that that's what a lot of people struggle with. Like even me as like a leader trying to have a connection with people that report to me, they also find it strange because they don't know how to behave that way. They don't know how to be how to have that communication with me without losing the respect or the time. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah, that's something I struggle with as a woman, especially we've talked about that. Like, I don't tell people my age because I lose the respect, right? That's something I struggle with, is wanting to connect and learn about this person, be relatable, and make myself accessible and approachable.
yeah,
But also trying to not let them treat me like a doormat. Like that's something I struggled with as a teaching assistant when I was in grad school and I was really young.
but that's the self limits.
Clients, right?
Yeah.
So I would say connecting with someone doesn't mean no boundaries. I think that's what we're both trying.
Yeah, it doesn't mean that you can't say, like, I have friends that used to work for me. Majority of my friends either work for me or work for them. We were never peers. We were, I was always in either they were my boss or I was their boss. And I think that there is a balance. There is you can do it. I think that the answer is that you can do it.
And different situations are going to have different boundaries.
Correct.
Yeah.
There are things that I don't talk about. For example, for people that work for me, I never talk to them about work more than they are allowed to know. And I'm not saying that we're doing something illegal, but more like, there are things that they don't need to know because it's not going to impact them directly or even indirectly. right? So
Hmm.
like a bigger conversations that I would have to explain a lot, and they're just not. It's just like a child. You can't explain how atoms work and stuff like that, and how the solar, like if they're like 2 years old, they can't comprehend that, right? Like, and I'm not saying that agent like hourly are children, but you know what I'm saying? Like, there's just a difference
Different
in,
times and
yeah, or like
about it. Yeah.
talk about other things that are talked to in private, and so those things I never do. So that is a good boundary to have. And then, but also you can have a conversation with, I never talk about other employees with them. So be very, treat them as an adult.
Yes, that is a big leadership red flag that I have seen is the talking shit about other employees with employees.
Yeah.
Because if they're doing that to you, they're doing that about you.
Oh, they're doing it too.
And it's not being your leader and solving the problem.
Yeah.
And sometimes it makes them feel like they did their job because they commiserated with you. But if you said, hey, this person's bullying me or this person isn't doing their job and I'm picking up the slack or whatever, and all they do is, yeah, they suck, then do something about it.
Yep.
And I can't tell you how many people I've seen, whether coaches or coworkers back in the day, who I've set up and like, do you realize they're gaslighting you, telling you they're on, like, they have the power to do something. They're just
Yeah.
not.
But that's the whole thing that the whole theme of everything that we do. It's the people are in positions of leadership and they're not leaders. They
Yeah.
don't know. They are there just to bullshit with their friend. With
Well,
like,
like you had said earlier about, you just said something you heard on a podcast. You didn't say you didn't respond to what I said. One of the last places that I worked, that was really bad, that I was like, I'm going into business by myself. Um, one of my friends also worked there. I'd known her before. And she's like, this man, every time I talk to him, sounds like he just opens a coaching manual and finds something and says it back to me. He never
yes.
responds to what I actually say. And that should not be a lost art.
And again, that's why we are talking about the crisis of soft skill crisis, because like again, right, like there is not a genuine, people don't want to just talk to you. They I there are two things you mentioned earlier about conflict, right? Like how your roommate did not know how to handle conflict. People nowadays don't know, like the newer generations, they no longer know how to handle conflicts, and period. The whole ghosting thing, never coming back to work, that's what it was. People rather, I think Simon Sinek says this, that people rather just ghost you than actually have a conversation with you.
I know
And
that's true in dating. Is that also happening in
And
work?
at work, yeah, as well.
Oh my
People
God.
quit because they don't want to have a conversation with their boss. They quit because they don't want to have a conversation. People have such a hard time to have a conversation with their leaders or with HR or with anybody because they're afraid of retaliation, because they don't even know the laws about retaliate. Like they don't even know these things.
Yeah.
And but it's so bad that people are bringing their mother or father to interviews, and I'm not talking about waiting in the waiting room, talking about asking to bring their parents inside the room with them because they don't know how to handle things. They don't know how to have a conversation because, again, on TikTok, on social media, they take whatever information you're giving them. They either respond via chat or they just swipe. It's not a reciprocal thing. They're just taking it in. They don't have the actual.
Well, and sometimes not even under their real name. So they're used to saying things without having to take
Yeah.
any accountability.
Even if they actually, and when they type, it's usually like two sentences, right? Or unless they go into like a rampage, but it's like,
Hmm.
this is not a communication. You took
Right. It's a
something,
one way.
you took a 30-second part and you assumed my whole life out of this, and
Hmm.
you wrote it, and you wrote your comment without giving me the ability to have a conversation. And I think
Hmm.
that that's how it is on, like, this is translating into the real world where people
Yeah.
get irritated if you tell them no, or if you tell them like, well, unfortunately I can't do that. They are flipping out, and you're like, but
Mhm.
Let's talk about it. Let me tell you why I
Right.
can't do this. Patient people don't have anymore. I've always been known for being somebody who has no patience. But in my personal life, I have no patience. I don't. I have been working real hard to get it. I've been like, now I'm like, you know what? I have to work on patience, and that's okay. I need to let go,
Mhm.
but not on things like, I understand, for example, that the bus is going to be late. I understand that traffic can be bad. I understand that people have questions. I understand those things, but it's when it's excessive. But patience is also something that people don't have anymore. So patience, knowing how to handle conflicts, knowing how to talk to people, and to talk to people just because you want to. Again, I keep going back to this because it's true, man. It's just having a meaningful connection with another human being.
I think there is also this just a lot we've talked about. I think we've talked about. I don't remember if it was recorded or not. Of that people make assumptions without asking questions,
Oh
and
yeah,
that's something I see a lot online. Is from very little things. Like I used to have in my bio industrial organizational psychologist. I've since reduced it, but even when I had that, I would get comments all the time that were, "Wait, are you a medical doctor?" And like that is one click. Or not, you don't even have to click on that. You could, in most of my videos, I introduce myself as I'm an industrial organizational
yes,
psychologist. Like the number, and I've told all the time when I've referenced the unwritten rules, I frequently get comments that people are like, well, what are the unwritten rules? Are you going to gatekeep that? And it's like, you just made entire, if you had just clicked on there's a playlist at the top of my profile that has all of them right there. There are other ones pinned right there. Like all you had to do is click one thing, but instead you made an entire assumption. Not that
yeah.
I'm without flaws, but you could use critical thinking and finding more of my flaws.
Again, you can actually go after the information without, because that's what the algorithm does, right? It shoots you out of
Yes, and people
one
are so used
random
to having
video.
this world catered to them
Yeah.
that I think they're shocked. I made a video about that last week, actually. But on the other end of that, I don't just want to hate on younger people. I want to hate on everybody. Um,
Yeah.
is there's also been soft skills that have never been expected of certain groups anywhere, even at work. And this is what, when you were in Brazil, and I did this with Mariana, she talked about human centered leadership being kind of like not the backlash, but the response to the leadership during the Industrial Revolution, like after World War II, was largely based on military leadership.
Hmm.
Military and sports is a lot of what like 1940s to 2000s American leadership looked like. And that is not applicable to many situations, especially
Yeah.
at work, of like, why are you acting like a drill sergeant when this isn't war?
Yeah.
Right? Um, and so I think that is something I also want to highlight while we talk about, because I do think technology is completely warping how we interact with human beings. But I also think that while we have this younger generations who have been allowed to spew their feelings without, into the internet sphere to millions of people without even having their real name or photo and no accountability for what they say, we also have institutions that have been made by groups of people who were not just not expected to have empathy, but were punished for showing any kind of emotional awareness, that it
Hmm.
looked weak because
Yeah.
that's not manly. And these were all men, and particularly white men, because during that era is still Jim Crow, right?
Yeah.
So um, it's like we have this clashing of different sins to
That's
use
it. And the
uh,
millennials are stuck in
Uh,
between. Yes.
not yeah, and then millennials are just like everything sucks.
Yep.
Millennials,
Make a decision. Whatever you say, it's fine.
yeah,
Yes.
we're like, millennials are just like, I haven't looked outside yet because I've just been chained to my desk. um,
Yeah.
so it's like this clashing of, I'm proud of myself for having no soft skills, and I have no control over what is allowed to express, and you can't tell me no. And Not that every one of those groups is like that, because
Right.
people say that online, but I do think we see these forces at work,
Oh,
and
100%.
I don't think either way is good.
No, I think again, right? You say this a lot. The world's not black and white, right? Like we need to find that
This
common
isn't
ground.
sports.
Yeah. But it's funny you said about like, oh, things are being catered to them through their phones. And funny enough, I was watching a video the other day, and he says something that I found it very interesting. I forgot the name of it. Was a Brazilian, it was influencer, Brazilian influencer account, and he was saying how it's like, remember before social media, we all knew the top bands in the world. Everybody knew. You may not like it, right?
Who
So
they were.
let's, but you knew who they were. So let's just say that we're talking about Rolling Stones, right? Everybody knows who Rolling Stone, up into a certain point, of course, knows how the Rolling Stones are. You can
Right.
like their song or not, but you knew because they were everywhere. And they
Mhm.
were everywhere in the sense of the radio stations that everybody listened to, because you didn't have an option to not listen to a radio station. You will
Right.
walk
You
into
can have your
somewhere and
Apple
it's
playlist.
playing.
Yeah.
Yes. They would be on television shows that the only channels that we had that we could watch. There's only a few shows that we could watch, and everybody was watching them, right? He was saying this about Brazil is really big in soap operas, right? It's not like Mexican soap operas, but it's soap operas as well. And it's not like Days of Our Lives that go for like 30 plus years, but it's really big. It's a really big market. And that's how we knew the songs, because the songs would play on that. We knew
Mhm.
because of the intro. That's all we talked about. We talked about the soap opera, what happened in the chapter last night. Everybody talked about the same things. They have different views about the same event, but we were all fed, like we're all being feed. Well, I don't even know how
Being
to say that.
fed.
Yeah, I was like, that did not sound right. We're all being fed the same information in a way.
Mhm.
And we could say, I'd like it, I don't like it, but I knew about it. Nowadays, there are people that I talk about because I know they're very popular, but they're popular for my niche.
Right.
You have no idea who these people are. So
Right.
now everything's so tailored that we don't even know anymore. So a lot of things people like, we when we were in Orlando, I think I think, I don't know if you were with me at that day or not, but someone's like, oh my God, that guy is famous. And I look, I was like, I have no idea who this
I think
person
that's
is.
the day before I got there, because you told me about it when I got
Yeah.
there.
And I was like, who the heck is this person? And
Right.
people were going in there taking pictures. I'm like, who? But before, we all knew who the famous people were.
Right.
Right. So I think that also interferes with the whole, this is my world and you need to see my world through my eyes and only the things that I'm being fed
And
right
if
now.
you don't know my world, you're an idiot.
Correct. So
That's
it's
it, which
like
is, yeah.
and even the same niche, right? Like people that have follow any of my accounts know that even though I am a leadership coach, I also do a lot of um I don't like to use the word manifestation, but that's the mainstream thing. But like,
It was like
creation of,
self-empowerment type thing.
yeah, kind of. And there are people that are really big in the community before social media that people don't know about. And I'm like, how the heck don't you know this person? This person started it all.
But that person maybe wrote a book and did maybe the original research, or had the retreat
Yeah.
that they didn't have to transfer to social media because they already had such a following. And so
Yeah. But
I
now they only know the influencer that talk about the things that they talk about.
right. So
Not their team anymore.
I think a good thing, and this is the social mobility of me coming out, is the internet algorithms have given people who would have never had a chance through traditional routes
100%.
opportunity.
Yes.
I think
Yes.
like Lizzo was discovered because of her social media. I'm pretty sure it was Lizzo.
Oh, yeah.
And like she totally deserves like recognition for her music and everything that she does. The problem is, like you said, we all saw the same things and we maybe disagreed on them, but we had what I've read about is referred to as a shared reality.
Yes.
And I talk about this a lot on my channel of um, with algorithms the way they are right now. We see this a lot with the political divide, but on anything is we are all across all age groups. It's being tailored to us because our data was bought without consent. That's why Zuckerberg's always getting dragged to Congress, and why Congress suspiciously keeps buying Meta stock, just saying. And wondering, hey, you took this data, you sold it for marketing. Like, the purpose of the algorithm is to get you to click on it.
Yeah.
Because it is
That's
true.
the only thing. They want you to stay there.
Because
That's all
that's how
they
it makes
want.
its money. That's how it makes its money. So we don't have a shared reality anymore. And that is certainly impacting our soft skills, because when other people don't know things that we know, we attack them. And I read a really good book about this. I talk about all the time on my channel,
You
Doppelganger.
read books still? Damn.
You think I read books? We only had a whole episode on a book I read that I was very excited about. But Doppelganger by Naomi Klein has literally changed how I approach talking about politics to my own parents. I will instead ask, instead of being like, you haven't heard about that Supreme Court ruling? I'll be like, did this show up on your newsfeed? And every single time it's been no. And they'll do the same to me. They'll be like, did this show up on your newsfeed? And they haven't even read the book. They've just picked up on, hey, if we do it this way, we don't have an argument. Like,
Yeah.
And then it becomes a different, and that is something that I am so, as I've talked about on here, how hard it is to have relationships in this polarized world that are so different. Like, people always ask, like, how do you handle, all the big changes you've had in your family being so different?
I mean, I asked you that question last week. I said, how is it going back home, right? Like, how does the intensity of the polarization in today's worlds on any topic, to be
Yeah.
honest?
Oh, like, don't get me wrong. Like, I'm going to be home days before this election, and that's going to be stressful, and it's going to be a lot of labor. But I am so grateful that I have information that is not just fed to me by technology. Because even if I disagree with it, the only way I'm going to know other information exists is by being around people who disagree with me. Like that, our hope for humanity and knowing about each other's issues, whether political or work or whatever, is going to rely on if we continue to talk to each other, even in virtual formats, even texting, or I almost said WebEx. Oh my God, that's the Fed coming out, or Zoom or whatever, to say, this happened to me. Has that ever happened to you? This is my work experience. I mean, I've given, Sheryl Sandberg gave the example in her Lean In book decades ago. I can't believe that was decades ago. That when she approached the all male executive board of Google and was like, I'm 8.5 months pregnant. We need pregnancy parking. I can't walk across Google campus in the amount of time to make all these meetings while I'm 8 months pregnant and my ankles are swollen. And their response wasn't get over it. Their response was, oh my God, that never even occurred to us. Of course we need pregnancy parking, right? Like, that's not going to show up on their algorithms nowadays.
Correct.
Partly thanks to Google, ironically. But the face-to-face interaction of like, you see these ankles? I can't get there in 15 minutes.
Yeah. But it's true. Yeah. It's the conversation, right? Is the regardless of your extremist view of the world, right? Like, what is the conversation? One thing that I talked about before, and I don't bring this often, it's because it's polarizing as well. It's not politics, but it is the fact that I'm vegan, right? Just because I am one doesn't mean that I'm trying to convert everybody. And I do know there's a lot of people out there trying to convert other people. I get that. I get it. But that doesn't make me one of them, right? And if people ask me, I answer. But it's like, well, I love when people attack and it's like, well, why you eat? I personally don't like fake burgers or fake meat and stuff like that. I don't like the taste. But people are like, why are you trying to make it, why you're trying to make me fake meat if you stop eating meat? I was like, because nobody stops eating meat necessarily because they don't like the taste of it. They like because they think differently. Right. And that's the problem. That's the problem. Because if I tell you that I don't like meat, instead of saying that I'm vegetarian, that I'm vegan, that's fine. That's acceptable. But it's the idea that I think different than you, that I look at a situation and I decided to go a different way than the majority of the people.
And that maybe I'm judging that you don't care about animal rights as much. You don't care about your health. Yeah.
nobody ever, nobody that has ever stopped smoking, it says when there's like, oh, I don't like this anymore. No, they stopped smoking because they understood
No,
that
they
their
love
life.
smoking, but they needed to.
Correct. Or
And
the,
people
like,
do that with exercise too. One my best friend's mom growing up, she would run every morning, and people would like attack her, like verbally, of
yeah.
why would I just don't have time, or you must have so much time in your day. She was like, I
Oh,
have so
yeah.
right. She was like, I don't care if you
Yeah.
exercise. I
People
just
tell me
feel
all the time, like, I just could never go without, I can never live without cheese. Like, that's not true. Anybody can live without cheese.
but
Like, that's
also you're not
not
asking them to not eat cheese.
exactly. That's exactly right. So, like, whenever people are like, oh, you're vegan, oh, I could never. I was like, okay. I mean, I never said that you should. I was just be, but
Right.
that's the thing. And I think also, and you are a psychologist, you might be able to touch to that. But people, at the moment that they know you are doing something, that you are donating somewhere, that you are devoting your time to charity, that you're doing something that is inherently or known as a good thing, or like something that you should be an altruist about it and doing things like that. Because being vegan
Some
in
that
reality
require
is like,
sacrifice.
yeah, something that I'm doing. It's not for my good. It's for the good of other things that are not even humans. You know what I'm saying? I'm doing this for, although eventually there is the whole idea that is also better for the environment, but I do this 100% for animals. But it's interesting how, because of that, they need to find an excuse as to why they're not doing it and tell you why they're not doing it. As
Mm-hmm.
if you, just by existing in a different way that they are, you are threatening the way that they're living. So it's like, like, oh, like if I see, and that happened to me too, when I see people exactly like running, like running a marathon. Chicago Marathon just happened this past weekend. And I'm like, man, I really wish I could run a marathon. I never judged them. They never made me feel bad that I wasn't running a marathon. But I was like, I really wish I could. I never told them like I could never run a marathon. I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
I've always wanted to run one. I never got myself to do it. Which is true. I never got my
Mm-hmm.
put the effort, because there's that, so that there's the effort, but you're trying to justify in a way. And I think it's not even for us, it's for themselves. You know what I'm saying? It's like, I am going to say why, so I convince myself that I am okay, that it's fine, that I'm not doing it.
And we have Farah in the LinkedIn comments, or I hope I'm saying your name correctly, saying that she has done this in the past much more. I hope that means that you have found your way out of doing your own. Because speaking of, Raquel, you brought up manifesting um, earlier. What you're saying just now about the people who feel attacked and try to discourage your good behavior, that's what reminds me of when I started doing more like analysis on what I want in my life. Sorry, I talk like a scientist no matter what, but like really
Me
reflecting
too. You are.
on what do I want my path to be. And this was like before I decided, all right, I need to
Yeah.
have a roommate for a little while. I need to start the business. I need to do all these things. Was I read this really great book called Life on Fire. And it's just like this 100-page book, and had exercises to like really carve that out. And one of the chapters was on when you do not go down the path that has been selected for you, but you start to carve your own. People on that other path, that with that heavy foot traffic, are going to tell you you're doing it wrong.
Yeah.
It's going to be a lot of them, because there's a reason that that foot traffic is so heavy. However, what they are yelling at you is, I feel bad that I didn't make my own path. That
That's a
I didn't
hundred.
listen.
Yes.
That I
That's what
didn't
it
listen
is.
to my
Yep.
heart, soul, whatever you want to call it. And I'm attacking you. Not that there are never people who don't give us wisdom or guidance. Like, I have certainly had people who are like, you know, maybe sell the house first. Like maybe consider,
Yep.
have you consider. But even then, I find that people who come with the wisdom usually still frame it as a question. Like, have you thought about this?
Yeah.
Right?
Or like, how are you gonna, like, actually, it's like a therapist, right? They use, like, a good therapist, they never tell you what to do. They kind of question you, like,
Through it. Yeah.
so if that happens, like, did you think about it? Do you want to think about it? Because sometimes you don't want to think about it, right? Like, you just want to
Did
kind
you
of, let's say,
consider this? Did you consider
yeah.
that?
Yeah.
And I even had a professor who used to do that before he would approve your analysis. And it got to the point I didn't know that's what he did until I was like, no, we said we're doing this because this, and that wouldn't work. And he was like, finally, you've thought about it. Let's do
There
it.
you
And
go.
I was like, this was intense. But that you are hearing their cries of pain of
Yes, yes.
there's a voice in me that I have not listened to.
Yeah.
And I'm not the manifestation self-empowerment person, but that resonated with me. Um,
I actually have a one of my talks, one of my speeches. It's I make an analogy, which I clearly won't make it the full thing now because we have 5 minutes. Even though I said that we're probably not going to do a full hour today because I wasn't feeling so well. But here you go.
long, and here we actually have people live commenting. And
I
like,
know. So, but it's the and I do an analogy about like if you were given a car, like imagine that you were born and the moment you were born you were given a car. Everybody's being given a car and it has a GPS system inside. And for a long time, you're just following your GPS, and nobody says anything because you just got here, so they let you pretty much do whatever. But at a certain point, you start seeing everybody going to one direction and to like the actual highway, right? Like you start seeing people heading that way.
right.
But your GPS, even though you see people going there, you say the GPS keeps telling you to go a different direction. And you go for a little while and it seems kind of rocky. So it was like, well, maybe they are correct. So maybe my GPS is broken. So maybe I'll go with them. And then you go with them. And then in a little bit, your GPS is incessant. It's like, turn right, make a U-turn, or turn right, turn right. And you're like, what the heck? You
Mhm.
finally stop at a gas station and you meet somebody else and they say, and you're like, hey, my GPS seems to be broken. He's like, oh no, that's fine. All of our GPSs are broken. You just follow the path. That's all you have to do. They're like, but you don't get annoyed with that noise. Like, oh no, you learn to like tune it out, and you
Ooh,
keep going, and you
yes.
keep going, and you
Ooh,
keep going, but it doesn't stop. It doesn't stop. It doesn't. And then you get to the end of the road, right? Because we're all gonna get to the end of the road, and other people are coming, majority of people arrive from the same place and like, how was your trip? And you say it was good, it was decent, didn't see much. But then you see this person coming from like a very different direction. The cars are muddy and like all like banged up, and you look at them and they're like the happiest people
I had a
alive,
great
and you say,
time.
what happened? Like, and they say, oh, I just
I went on
followed
an
the GPS. And they're like, oh, but I thought the GPS was broken. I was like, no, it was never broken.
yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So that's
If you don't listen to that voice, it will eventually come out as a scream.
yeah.
And maybe
But
at another person, but it's really at yourself.
yeah. So, all right, with that very philosophical ending, because
Yes.
we are at a full hour now.
Yes.
Um,
Well, thank you for bringing up this topic.
yeah,
And it's a very important one. And sharing your annoying experience where you were
it's
treated.
okay. It gives me great content for our podcast. So
And
hopefully,
thanks to our live commenters. I don't,
yes,
we've only had live one other time and neither of us caught it. So this is the both first time it's happened and we've caught it. So
and we got it. And thank you, Farah. I am Farah. I want to say I have been seeing you posting a lot more, and I'm very proud of you because I know this is something you were struggling with before. So good job. I see you on Facebook a lot more now. So happy. That's that thing, you got to push yourself out of the comfort. Maybe we do a podcast on that next time, another episode on that, on getting out of our comfort zone.
oof.
How,
Yes. Yes.
how
Well,
it's like you just push
about,
it through it.
every time I see something about being cringe or recording in public, I think of you saying, so what?
Yep.
All right. Well, maybe
Because
that'll be one.
tell for the people that are on mine page, like, because you went from how many to how many now on TikTok?
Me?
Yeah.
I went from 0 to I'm at like almost 20,000. But that was in May.
So I mean, but it lasts in a year, right? So it's like, is the pushing through is like knowing and getting like navigating the
I had only just
and
started,
down.
so I got lucky with TikTok picking up on my second video ever, and that's where I got my first 7,000. But I had been trying for a year to gain any steam anywhere, and it hadn't worked. So just keep trying, and you eventually find the platform and the message that sticks.
Yeah. And
All
that's
of
it.
that prep work was honing the skills that I needed to do it once it was ready to happen.
Yeah, and that's it.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, everybody.
Good night, everyone.
Good night. Where is it? I haven't used this in a minute. All right. Now, yes, I am ending the live.